Hi, welcome to another consonant analysis. This analysis is on the subject of Peter Sutcliffe, also known as the Yorkshire Ripper. It's 125 markers in length, that's the analysis, so it's quite a long one. And the extract that I've taken from his speech was a testimony, a sworn testimony that he made to the West Yorkshire Police after his capture. So I'll just go over the extract. So the extract that I've taken was the first paragraph from his testimony, which goes as follows. That was the incident that started it all off. I was driving through Leeds late at night. I'd been to somewhere having a couple of pints. You'll know the date better than me. It was Wilmer McCann. I was in a Ford Capri, K-registered, a lime green one, with a black roof, with a sun grill in the back window. So, as you can see, it's quite lengthy. And it sort of like parallels the Ted Bundy case, the Ted Bundy extract that I took in that respect. In terms of interpretation, I'll read that out. I put a man of opposites, a Jekyll and Hyde character, who believed that God was instructing him to kill, possibly with some sort of mental derangement, all at once weak and strong, despicable and benevolent, and so forth, a self-defeating person who sought to engage in meaningful relationships, each of which was invariably terminated in disaster. Generally, it seems as though his concept of relationship is confused to the degree that he treats all relationships in the same way, whether it be a professional at work, civil as in with the authorities, a personal as with himself, God, or a partner. Overlaying this seems to be the traditional values that most people are socialised with, constantly odds it seems with the subject's abnormal and disordered social interactions, a man then of pitiful circumstance. The key word would seem to be compulsion. The subject lived a life of compulsions, never really wanting to do anything but being compelled to do everything, to live up to the many different expectations of life vis-a-vis work, family and God. So there's quite a few comments, and I'll just breeze through those. I'll let you read those and I won't bore you to death with them. There is a duality in, as I've indicated, there is actually a duality in what he's actually saying. So, like, for example, he'll talk in terms of opposites like being proud, but then feeling low. Well, those come across in the markers anyway. And in terms of disparate meanings, what you tend to find with the markers from the source reference that I use is that you'll often find contradictory markers and also markers which are very comprehensive and cover a wide range of issues as well, all in one marker. And with the marker being context sensitive, so in other words, what that means is it will fit different situations, but you'll only know which situation to actually pull out when you've actually got the situation in front of you. And what I found with doing this analysis for this particular subject is that he basically seems to fulfill all of the different meanings for that particular marker consistently. It's like he's maxed out basically in all areas, and that's all like that feeds into the duality because he's doing seems to be doing contradictory things all the time, like he's like two people. This feeds into it. There's an element of unbalancement about him because it seems that he gives a lot of forethought to doing something, but then when he does it, there's no real how would you say, planning with regards to what happens afterwards. He's not thinking about what happens afterwards. He's just thinking of doing something. It's like very impulsive. There is actually a mention in the markers for demon possession. Now, whether you believe in that or you don't, there was certainly some sort of possessive and frenzied activity going on, and that's documented and as has been witnessed by people who were actually attacked. Cycling, there's indication or mention of like cycling in the markers, like it was a perpetual cycle and it didn't end. As soon as one cycle is finished, another cycle started, and that's how his behaviour manifested itself, a continual cycle. This thing that he this thing that he maintained that he was actually doing it for God. Surprisingly, that does occur in the markers a lot. markers which are traditionally used by people, specifically with reference to God, he uses a lot of them, and I've actually listed those in a separate section in the themes, which I'll come on to. So it does lend credence to the notion that indeed, he wasn't lying. He did actually believe that God was telling him to do it. I'm not saying that I believe that, but he certainly seemed to believe it, and he came out in the markers. It consistently came out, and it's unusual because I don't usually get that from analyses. You might get it once or twice on an odd occasion, but not as consistently as this. It was like, full on. Pampering, the verb to pamper a child, which is unusual. It actually occurred once for Sutcliffe, and you'll note that it also, if you look in my analyses for Ted Bundy and R. Kelly, it occurs there. And I think with R. Kelly, I actually went into a bit of detail about that, because when I researched, it was the first time I come across it with R. Kelly, and when I actually researched, I discovered that he had been pampered by his mother, but that's because of the absence of a father. Whereas with Peter Sutcliffe, apparently had a regular working class Catholic upbringing. There was nothing, particularly traumatic about it, as far as we were aware. Comparing him with other serial killers, like Ted Bundy, for example. Ted Bundy, he went around rampaging and killing. And he also believed that God was telling him to do things. However, the difference between Sutcliffe and Bundy, as far as I can see, is that Bundy wasn't in a state of confusion. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was calculated, and he achieved what he intended. Whereas Sutcliffe, he was like in confusion with what he was doing. Specifically, especially with what I've said with regards to planning, how he didn't give thought to what was going to happen afterwards. He just wanted to do something, frenzied. With regards to the presentation of results, which you'll read in the report, which is in a link to which is in the description below, what I've done is I've put them into 3 sections. I've put the results into 3 sections. So all of the markers are in the first section are literally just as they come across in the extract. Yeah, and the reason why I did that was to show frenzy, or to show disassociation, or contrasts or contradictions. And it actually sort of like reads as a story as well, how he actually went through a day. And also interwoven with that is you'll find that interwoven with the markers is markers to do with what he actually did, and then some markers to do with when he actually came to the end and he was actually telling the police. So they're also like interwoven. So like I said, if you read that first section of markers, it's all of the markers, but just as they come. It sort of like should read as a narrative. The second section has got all of what I call the exact markers. These are markers which actually occur in the source reference. There's actually a marker for those physically in the source reference, whereas the inexact markers, which is section 3, is all the markers which are not in the source reference. They exist between 2 markers, and what you'll find is I put those those particular markers in brackets, indicating that there's multiple markers in there to cover that particular range. And finally, I've put with regards to his Yorkshire accent. Now, if you actually go into the report, there's actually a link in there to the confession from West Yorkshire Police. If you actually go into the confession, you'll find it's in English. There's no accents in there. Obviously, they've put it in plain English. So, what you'll find though when I've actually done I've extracted the consonants from that, I've done it with the mind that he's actually got a Yorkshire accent. I've actually heard him speak. I've heard extracts of his actual speech. His audio recordings. And because I come from Yorkshire anyway, I know pretty much how he's going to be saying the words. So that's how I've extracted the consonants on that basis. Okay, so that's with regards to comments. With regards to themes, I'll just really brush over those. I'll just brush over the headings and let you read those yourselves. And what these tried to do is they tried to sort of like bring together all of the markers into one place to summarise. So it's easier for you to digest rather than to wade through all of the markers. There are about 125, I believe. So the themes are proximity, getting close to people, negativity, positivity, thought communication, movement, consciousness, conscience, God, harm and development. So yeah, all in all, that's Peter Sutcliffe, a strange man, pitiful, I would say, who really didn't live a life. He just went through life, and as a result of him not really knowing who he was, perhaps because he suffers from some sort of mental derangement. People got in the way. So that's all I have for you. All I have for you today. If you'd like to share, share, and subscribe, that would be wonderful. Thank you for listening, and look forward to seeing you in the next analysis.